the matter?
I was sure she'd notice.
Notice what?
The rope, of course. Brandon, we've got to hide it.
Why?
Why?
Yes, why? It's only a piece of rope, Philip, an ordinary household article. Why hide it? Belongs in the kitchen drawer.
In 1948, Alfred Hitchcock was struggling under the Hays Code studio constraints and longed to rid himself of producers and meddling executives, achieving that nirvana, creative control. It was a long, winding road to get to this point. From a relatively lowly background as far as film jobs are concerned, after doing a few years as a title card designer, Hitchcock burst onto the silent film scene in 1925. His first successful film, The Lodger, was a Jack the Ripper-like thriller, which has continued to inspire the thriller genre even now. From then on, Hitchcock was off to the races. In the beginning, the first British phase of Hitchcock's career, he worked on a parallel track to the American cinema in Hollywood. His 1929 thriller Blackmail, following 2 years after the jazz singer amazed American audiences, was the first British talkie ever made. Hitchcock films, like The 39 Steps, The Lady Vanishes, and Sabotage, are still some of the best-ranked British films ever created. However, Hollywood was where the action was, and David O. Selznick began lobbying for Hitchcock to join him in America. 1940 began Hitchcock's American second phase with Rebecca, Suspicion, Shadow of a Doubt, and Notorious. Notorious! Hitchcock had a long love affair with California and his 200-acre Cornwall ranch in the Scotts Valley. He primarily lived in Bel Air, where he'd lived for the rest of his life, and finally passed away peacefully. By 1948, Hitchcock was struggling under the studio constraints in Hollywood and was getting restless. He wanted full creative control and had become bored of a Hollywood that filmed in an extremely traditional style. So he aimed to show what he could do as one of America's most talented and bold filmmakers. The result was 1948's Rope, a commercial failure but a technical masterpiece.
Brandon!
What the devil? Don't you have any more sense than to... What is it? Well, go on, yank it out.
I can't.
If Mrs. Wilson were here, she'd yank it out for you. A stupid display like that in front of somebody else will be just as good as a confession. Now, take these and get a hold of yourself. If you'd let me keep the light on before as I'd wanted, I would have seen
All
it.
right. You're perfect.
We have to be, Philip. We agreed there was only one crime either of us could commit. The crime of making a mistake.
The meta-commentary of Hitchcock's adaptation of the 1929 play Rope's End is fascinating. In the movie, two brilliant young rich boys, Brandon Shaw and Philip Morgan, decide to plan and commit the perfect, most immaculate murder. They kill their friend David in the first scene and hide the body in a giant chest. The murder is meant to be technically perfect, clean, and highly impressive. They got the idea from their former prep school housemaster, Rupert, who talks about murder honestly all the time.
Careful application of the trigger finger and a pair of seats in the first row is yours for the shooting. And have you had any difficulty in getting into our Velvet Rope restaurants?
Frightful.
A very simple matter. A flick of the knife, madame. And if you'll kindly step this way, step over the head waiter's body.
By committing the murder, Brandon and Philip want to show that they are the elite few. Impressing their former housemaster telepathically, I guess, they don't really think that part through.
The few are those men of such intellectual and cultural superiority that they're above the traditional moral concepts. Good and evil, right and wrong were invented for the ordinary average man, the inferior man, because he needs them.
Then obviously you agree with Nietzsche and his theory of the Superman.
Yes, I do.
So did Hitler.
Hitler was a paranoid savage. His Supermen, all fascist Supermen, were brainless murderers. I'd hang any who were left. But then you see, I'd hang them first for being stupid.
In fact, they set it up so that only through getting caught can Rupert ever really find out.
How? I mean, suppose you or I, how would you get David out of the way?
Now, you're much better at this sort of thing than I am.
No, but what would you do if you or I?
After the murder, they plan and execute a house party where the family and friends of their deceased classmate will unknowingly eat dinner off the chest. This obsession with technical detail and the ambition behind the murder are probably reminiscent of Hitchcock's thoughts about his own career. He longed to be the elite few, given creative control, and able to lord that over the many constrained filmmakers in Hollywood. This film is dripping with queer subtext. In the play, these are two gay lovers who commit a murder. And in the movie, it's hinted at, sometimes just as clumsily as Brandon and Phillips' hints about the murder.
We've killed for the sake of danger and for the sake of killing. We're alive, truly and wonderfully alive. Even champagne isn't equal to us or the occasion.
I'll take it, though.
You're not really frightened anymore, are you, Philip? You can't have fear, you know. Neither of us can. That's the difference between us and the ordinary man, Philip. They talk about committing the perfect crime, but nobody does it. Nobody commits a murder just for the experiment of committing it. Nobody except us.
Our guest tonight, Matt Baume, who makes video essays about queer culture and history, has an excellent video essay called The Secret Gay Love Affair Behind Alfred Hitchcock's Rope that I suggest you check out.
The film is famous for how Hitchcock filmed it, to look like one continuous scene playing out in real time with no cuts.
It was a madhouse, you know, it was just crazy.
But there's something else that makes it an even more audacious movie, which is the unstated fact that its main characters are a gay couple.
What is extraordinary about it is its treatment of homosexuality.
Slipping queer characters past film censors in the 1940s was no easy task. And in fact, they nearly didn't get away with it.
And it was marked in big blue pencil. Homosexual, out, out, out.
And what Hitchcock didn't know, at least not at first, is that the writer of the film was secretly having an affair with the leading man.
Hitchcock imagined that sneaking the queer subtext past clumsy censors would be the type of achievement that he could lord over the many. But more than that, the film's techniques utilized by Hitchcock here are absolutely masterful. The whole thing, although this isn't really true, is filmed as though one continuous shot without cuts or breaks. The point is to show the story in real time, something that was definitely not attempted in mainstream Hollywood. This is largely done by keeping the whole story contained in Brandon and Philip's apartment. The characters do go in and out, but we do not, left to watch the action transpire in the rooms. The apartment was a singular set with removable walls, and the camera often was left to do 10-minute takes without cutting. The microphone and camera were on wheels and could move throughout the set. Other directors frequently utilized long takes, but they were always interspersed with shorter cuts. There are no shortcuts in Rope. Jimmy Stewart plays Rupert, the former headmaster who is now a philosophy publisher.
How do you do?
Hello, chum.
Oh, Miss Walker.
How'd you know?
Brandon's spoken of you.
Did he do me justice?
Do you deserve justice?
The Rupert character in the play was meant to also be a foppish, effeminate gay character, having connected with the boys through that.
Now, there's nothing explicitly gay in the text of Rope's End, but Hamilton himself acknowledged that his dialogue conveyed homosexual subtext, and that certain parts were, in his words, really cut out for a pansy. His dialogue suggests a very close relationship, and his description of their friend who turns them in is foppish, exquisite, and verges on effeminacy, clearly patterned on Oscar Wilde. Not only that, but as the play was performed over the next few years, the queer subtext was clear to audiences. Reviewers openly described the killers as homosexuals and perverts who commit a sexual crime.
However, Jimmy Stewart can't play feminine, and he becomes more misanthropic and mercurial of a character.
But I don't want to fence anymore.
Oh, what are you going to do?
I don't want to. But I'm going to look inside that chest.
Are you crazy?
I hope so. With all my heart, I hope I'm crazy.
Rupert, this has nothing to do with you.
I've got to.
Don't.
I've
Rupert.
got to look inside that chest.
All right.
Rope, a technical exercise first and foremost, flopped and did not bring Hitchcock the creative acclaim he craved. However, it has been fully rehabilitated and is now definitely understood for the technical masterpiece that it is.
There must have been something deep inside you from the very start that let you do this thing. But there's always been something deep inside me that would never let me do it. And would never let me be a party to it now.
What do you mean?
I mean that tonight you've made me ashamed of every concept I ever had of superior or inferior beings.
Anyway, before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Also, we are now monetized, so if you have any pressing questions during this live stream, send us a super chat, which helps me keep the show running, and which I am obligated by international law, human rights law, to answer. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Movie Night Extra. All of our after parties are on there forever. Okay, let me introduce the panel. Conan Neutron, host of Protonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends has a new split LP with Lung, Adult Prom, available now on Bandcamp. J. Andrew World, illustrator, book cover artist, artist for Give Them an Argument, co-host for Movie Night Extravaganza, and Bad Takes. Kristina Oakes. This Barbie is streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/cosmopolitics, Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Cosmopolitics. Send her some subs on Twitch. Matt Baume is a writer, storyteller, and video essayist, making videos about pop culture from a queer perspective, including his video on Rope, the secret gay love affair behind Alfred Hitchcock's Rope. His YouTube channel playlist is Matt Baume's Culture Cruise. I, of course, am your sexually ambiguous, Harvard-educated rogue and one of the superior few movie podcasters and murderers, Forrest Miller. Let's go, Brandon.
Well done. Of course, the part of Kristina Oakes will once again be portrayed by the Wolfman with a guitar tonight because she's not going to be joining us. Matt Baume, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope it's okay that I use some of your video essay, which I really enjoyed. It's an excellent video essay for anyone to, turn this off and watch that instead or whatever, or watch it after, whichever one. No, I really liked it, so I was happy that I could include it in the intro in pieces.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It's wild because I feel like for me, Andy, you're muted. I saw Rope like pretty early on. Like it actually was the second Hitchcock movie that I saw, which I know was relatively atypical. And it was shown to me under the auspices of check out what you can do mechanically with filming, from a cinematography standpoint, like the long shot stuff, which was mind blowing. And at the time, I was like 15, and I was like, are they gay? And you have to understand, I did not grow up in a big city or anything. Like it was not like a educated area, but I did have lots of queer friends. And that was the thing I picked up immediately, rather than and then it had to be showed me look, the only time you see the breaks, in the 1940s exactly, is when you basically change the film canisters and whatnot. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's really cool. That's really interesting.
It's almost like looking into an aquarium too, because they have to have the actors go in front of the camera lens. So right. It's like you're almost watching an aquarium, and then sometimes the fish will just hit the glass right in front of you, and then you're like, huh, this is an oddly an oddly clumsy actor they have there. I guess they just kept this in, but then you think about it, you're like, oh no, wait, that's the only way that they can actually get it to cut, except for the time that the camera goes down into the chest, and then we're in the chest for a second, pretty much, and then back up again.
Which is totally sneaky and has been reused multiple times. We talked about this, Forrest, you and I, on when we did The Player. We talked about that homage long shot that's actually an homage to Touch of Evil.
Yeah.
But yeah, that trick was literally right here, this film.
People love doing it with car trunks now, right? You'll go into the car trunk, and then they'll pull open the car trunk, and you'll be looking in from the trunk as if you're the person in the trunk, Reservoir Dogs did it and stuff like that.
Yeah. But it's been internalized as a cinema methodology.
I know. I first became aware of this because of the X-Files. Because remember, they did an episode where they wanted to do one long take despite commercial breaks.
There you go. And then that, there's the whole world of, there was 24, of course, is probably the most well-known, but there was all the... I can't remember there was a film that did that beforehand. It's fine. But the whole real-time phenomenon of filming things in real time and so on, without it even necessarily being a stage play sort of deal. But there's a rich history for it. So Matt, how did and apologies if this is in your YouTube thing. I don't actually watch YouTube stuff that much, so. But how'd Rope come to your attention on it? Because I know you.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not really sure. It's one of those Hitchcock movies that's kind of not on the A tier, so it's sort of one of those that's always sort of swirling in the background. I ought to get around to watching that. It's not Psycho or The Bird. It's not even Marnie, and yet the name kept bubbling up for me because a lot of the work that I do with my YouTube videos is about iconic movies and TV shows, particularly those who have, the basically the story of how those things were made, particularly when there's some sort of queer perspective on them and some queer aspect to their making. And like you mentioned, because those guys have just sort of a vibe between them. Obviously, there's nothing that they say at any point. They're never like, they never talk about their sexual encounters, and they never kiss or anything like that. But they have this incredible chemistry that is absolutely there intentionally. It was, everyone on the set knew what they were doing and was doing it on purpose. Anyway, It's just something that I've always been aware of. It's, one of those movies I at some point I got to talk about. And so as I started looking into it and learning more about the guys who made it, those main actors, the screenwriter, Arthur Lawrence, and the completely secret relationship that he was having with one of the actors, and what happened with their relationship following the movie. Really incredible story. And, not to mention how it completely turned Hitchcock's career around, getting out under the thumb of David O. Selznick at the time. So really incredible movie, from before, during, and after, right up until 2011 or so, when both Farley Granger and Arthur Lawrence both passed away. Their relationship went through a lot of different changes from over the course of 1949 to 2011. It's really decades long romance to friendship to estrangement to a new understanding, let's say, of each other.
David O. Selznick also, after the Benzodrine addiction, stopped being quirky and started being something that gets written about in every film school book or whatever. That's like, yeah, this guy was fucking geeked out of his mind the entire time he was doing cinema. I like that you include that little clip of his secretary talking about how sometimes when they had to work late, she'd be like, "Give me one of those Benzodrine," and would just pop it and just keep writing on late. And it's like, damn, dude.
Yeah, you think that started with this generation? It did not.
No, I mean, I definitely not. But I don't know. Benzodrine is one of those things that because now it's just an inhaler, so you don't really think about it being like the most abused fucking substance in the 1920s to 1940s.
Well, it's also what I was going with that was that it's wild what wasn't included in the code, right? Because like being pre-code stuff, it's like, oh yeah. Every like in the intro, okay, everybody has a slightest clue that wasn't some some cornpone hick from Iowa or something. It's like, oh yeah, well clearly they're a gay couple, duh. But by the same token, it's like while that was verboten, it's you have people get their pick me up pills all the time. It's what do you think that is exactly?
I love when it starts getting really heavy handed in the very in the first couple scenes, and they're just finger you know what I mean, putting their hands all over the champagne bottle before eventually popping it, and it's that is some classic fucking subtext.
Yes, you think? Yeah.
Ford would have written a book on that.
But it's also notable, and just real quick, I was thinking about it last night rewatching this because it's been a long time. You don't get Rear Window without a rope. Without rope, you don't get what we know of as Rear Window, period.
Yeah, I think that's true. Although the film was not as successful as they were hoping it would be, it was a great opportunity for Hitchcock to refine his technique when it comes to those long takes. I mean, he's always been really great at choreographing a camera, and I think Rope really shows off his skill. I'm working on a project right now about Psycho, and there's some incredible camera moves in that one. And also, I'd say Dial M for Murder has some great camera moves as well, which is particularly challenging because they're shooting in 3D, and they do some. I use the word choreography because it really feels like a dance. It's so deliberate and organized. By the time he gets to Psycho, Hitchcock was telling his actors, I'm not gonna worry about motivation and performance and characters. That's your job. You're the actor. I'm just gonna tell you if you're standing in the wrong place.
Follow your mark and try not to trip on the furniture.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely.
Which was that famous Jimmy Stewart quote where he said, "The only thing that's been rehearsed is the camera."
Yeah. But because the blocking, and people weren't. Again, if you were doing Broadway, it's all about blocking, right? But it wasn't necessarily something that was obsessed upon in filmmaking because
unless you're doing something today I guess with Black Swan or something like that. That's
what I was gonna say, except for musicals. In musicals, it absolutely was, but just for
and of course fight choreography.
But I think
Sure.
that even something like Vertigo, right, for Hitchcock to get the courage to be able to like keep entire scenes where Jimmy Stewart's driving in real time or walking like down a really long hallway, and to keep it going in real time, and to not be afraid to follow him down that hallway, or like to keep the camera moving even if nobody's in the shot, so it's almost like a painting, keep the camera moving. I feel like you have to go through something like this where you're doing these insanely long these like without cutting, right? These insanely long takes.
Long shots.
Because
well, North by Northwest too. I mean, I think you're right. I think you don't get Vertigo. I don't think you don't get. I think you don't get Psycho. Don't think you get North by Northwest. Like all of you think of we talk about this being not considered like the A tier of Hitchcock's movies by popular consensus. Like you don't get any of the A tier without this film though. That's what's nuts.
This really predicted all of those. This was the end of a bit of a rocky period. Well, it wasn't quite the end. It was coming up on the end of a rocky period. And then coming out of this is when we get, everything from, I think we had one more, we might have had the Paradigm Case or one of those. But then we start getting into the much more, we get Rebecca and, Strangers on a Train and
Strangers on a Train.
No, actually, I think Rebecca was just before, but the ones that are the best remembered, are coming up in the next decade, basically.
Yeah. So I had this book as a kid, right? I really liked Alfred Hitchcock. I had this the films of Alfred Hitchcock, and a lot of it's just glossy photographs of his sets and his camera work and stuff, and it goes movie by movie. It kind of it obsesses over the technical aspect of Rope, but kind of glosses over the plot of it. But that's the first I think I ever got interested in ever watching this movie, because they had a full glossy picture in black and white of the set and the entirety of it and how long it actually was. And I remember as a kid being really wowed and being like, wow, it's technically, I don't know if this is a movie that I'd want to watch for the plot, because it doesn't really explain what the plot is, but it looks like a technical feat, really.
The plot's good.
The plot is good. It just is. It's something where the technical achievement was so unique and interesting and unseen really at that point, especially for something like this, which is a bit of a mystery thriller. Although the mystery is doubly hilarious because you see them do the murder at the beginning, at the very beginning.
This is basically Columbo, and Jimmy Stewart's Columbo, I guess.
Which that wasn't written into the script originally. They didn't, the screenwriters didn't think Arthur Lawrence or whatever didn't think that it was even good that they showed the murder at the beginning. Hitchcock just kind of did it and then said, I'm going to keep it in, because they thought that the mystery, actually writing the screenplay for it was going to be whether or not there ever actually was a body in the trunk. And you're questioning the entire time, is there a body in here? Is there not? And then maybe at the end you see a glimpse of something, but that's what
makes it. That's what started up. That's what makes it unique, right? That's what makes it unlike so many other things of its time, which were good thrillers. But it's no, this is not your traditional thriller. The whole thing is watching Brandon and Philip just sort of are they gonna get busted? Are they not? Is one of them just gonna?
The school headmaster too.
Right, exactly. Is somebody, not to name any names, going to get too wasted and say the wrong thing? Yeah, probably. This is what it seems like, So that's the tension. The tension is if they get discovered. Actually, it almost makes you an accessory to the murder, which, of course, is the thing that Hitchcock absolutely loved, playing with.
I love the fact that instead of kind of having the professor, I guess, or the headmaster guy, right, as almost a drag mom for them, you know what I mean, a force that kind of brings them into a queer lifestyle and kind of acts as a parent almost to them, because of Jimmy Stewart's specific style of acting. He really leans hard on I'm a guy that talks about murder all the time to kids. That's his. So in every scene, he's just well, I think that, there's lots of inferior people that could just be killed off. And it's by the end of it, you're dude, you talked them into this. You're just a weird guy that's in another scene, right? That could be queer subtext, but isn't because of Jimmy Stewart. He's oh, well, he used to tell him all kinds of weird things. And, if it was a more effeminate, I guess, kind of character, you'd think, oh, well, that means that, he's always kind of making passes at them because it's Jimmy Stewart. You're no, he's always talking to them about murder. That's his big thing.
It's kind of his deal. He's sort of known for it.
I think that actually, Jimmy Stewart's choices with that character, I think, undermine it a bit. As it's described in the play, that Rupert character is a poet and somebody who kind of operates in the realm of theory and ideas without ever really exploring the practical considerations. He's a little bit more, I don't want to call him ephemeral exactly, but it's a character, I think, as Patrick, was it Wilson? I keep forgetting his name. Hamilton. As Patrick Hamilton wrote him, I think the Rupert character, it makes sense that he would be disinterested in the practical applications of ideas versus just the poetic, I don't know, the coming up with outrageous thoughts, kind of patterning him on Oscar Wilde. And then the way that Jimmy Stewart plays him, he's so much more of a, I don't know, a practical, I kind of hesitant to say American, but much more down to earth generally. And so I think it comes off as very weird that character never really considered, oh, wait, there might be a downside to this like thought experiment. It's really unclear, I think, to a viewer whether this whole Superman thing, this, that there's some superior beings thing that the Rupert character espouses in the film. Is he only ever just believing that? Is he only ever saying that as a joke? Or does he actually believe that? Because sometimes it seems like he's just kidding around, never really meant it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in every scene it seems like he's kind of kidding around, which is how Jimmy Stewart ends up.
Your Honor, in my defense, I was just goofing around.
Yeah, Your Honor, I'm a silly little guy. What can I say? But like, because it's Jimmy Stewart, right? Because he's like a weird mix of I guess down to earth is a good way of putting it, like, and charming at the same time, right? Like he's able to just kind of banter with everybody in the room, and everyone kind of just goes along with it, which After months of this guy just talking about murder all the time, though, I feel like it would take a turn. Like maybe one night it's charming where he's like, "Oh, just think about it. You could kill people who want theater tickets," and then you're like, "Oh, that's kind of cute." And then but after like months of that, you might be like, "Dude, does he kill homeless people?" Which actually kind of opens up a question for me that I was thinking of, which will never be answered, but like, if they had killed somebody like a homeless person, or if they had killed like a poor person that he didn't know, and he opens the trunk and it's someone he's never seen before, I don't know if his reaction is as horrified and as visceral as as someone that they're friends with, that they know that he would have had as another kid in his that went to the prep school with them. I don't know if I mean, that's not like an important question.
Yeah, I don't know that guy, so it has less impact, like that kind of. Yeah.
Or that really is like an inferior in my mind being that, like, that's the guy in the street corner. I don't really care about that guy anyway. Like, I don't know. So that was one question that I had, because the character is so mercurial and like uncertain in some ways.
Well, and it also, sorry, anybody, because it kind of lends into the whole conversation of the like, oh well, I don't agree with like the Ubermensch on these bases, but for these rules I do. Where it's like, well, yeah, but you're still tacitly agreeing with like extermination of peoples, like, so.
Yeah, well,
you're not really off the hook there, bud.
It's the funniest kind of like. I guess you got to the right point for the wrong reasons.
For like, completely the wrong reasons.
Like, I'd kill all the Nazis. It's like, I guess that's the correct answer, but like, I don't think because they're stupid was the point that most people were looking for there. I think it's because they're evil. But like, you're clearly the same kind of evil, but maybe the only way to defeat a bad Nazi is a good Nazi. I don't know. You could throw that out there as as Brandon's defense.
I was going to say that what's interesting too is like the way people talk about the victim in the film, it begs the question, it brings up the question of like, is he actually was he really deserving to be killed? Because remember their friend who's always like, oh, I have to study really hard because I'm not as smart as the dead dude.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like he would seem to fit their definition of a superior being along with them, right? Like, because it's like, oh well, a superior being is someone that's smart and that's in this realm, like this social class. It's kind of the person that they pick to kill is the smartest apparently among them, and also of their social class. It does kind of it does kind of bring up the question, like, if it was someone that wasn't, like Jimmy Stewart's horrified reaction, like he might just be like, oh well, that's the guy from the street corner. I don't care about that. I mean, Jimmy Stewart probably not, because it's Jimmy Stewart, but
he'd still be shooting the gun out the window.
I think it does I think indict in general, the idea that anyone could be superior, that anyone is capable of making that determination, because it always happens that as soon as somebody starts talking about like some people are more valuable than others, by incredible coincidence, the most valuable people are invariably the group that person belongs to.
Funny how that works out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's like the God question. Like when people end up describing God, it always kind of ends up reflecting them. They're like, oh, what does God look like when he's choosing, the beings to be saved? And it's like, oh, like me, of course. Like I'm
white beard, long hair.
Yeah. What an unbelievable coincidence.
It turns out that it's people with blue jackets and bolo ties. Who knew? Who knew?
But like, also, I think that it's an interesting thing after 2 world wars. This is the generation that isn't going to go to war in the same way, right? Like they'll go to Korea, but like they're not going to go to a world war in this way, and they're not fighting for an ideology in the same sense. You know what I mean? Like against this world kind of evil force. I mean, you could say that the Cold War is its own kind of thing, but they're not sending the boys over there to kill in the same ways. And so like in the beginning when they say, men usually die on the battlefield, like that's kind of a true statement. The last 2 generations of men had been killed on the battlefield right before this. And it's like that instinct to kill is kind of something that's explored here in a peacetime situation, I think, right? When society just goes back to normal after like 2 horribly traumatic events in a row.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's really noteworthy that the script is written by a gay Jewish man, who, is belongs to on multiple axes that were targeted by the last major conflict.
Yeah. Well, and it's again like it's crazy because it deserves to be engaged with on that level, and movie podcast. Yeah, that's definitely the
that's the best, the highest tier of existence.
Doesn't get any better, frankly.
Yes.
But that's why I'm always saying we got to kill political podcasters.
Right? Exactly.
They're the class of inferior beings.
but like that type of engagement socially at the time. I mean, it's crazy to think about. Like, I mean. Again, what you could get away with the code too, which again, to watch this now, it's like, well, yeah, of course. But if you were like, just like some average Joe with a hat, probably in the 1940s, I assume they all had hats.
I'm an average Joe. I wear a hat.
It wouldn't necessarily be obvious, but it would if it was something where you were immersed in the culture, then you would see representation in a way that is the only way you can get around it, which is just almost like to surreptitiously guided in, and so to speak, phrasing, but and to do so in the auspices of like almost like a reverse murder mystery, where again at the outset who did it. It's just the question of if they get away with it and why they did it in the first place. Which is, I mean, let's be clear, one of our main characters is sort of like a proto Patrick Bateman type, right? I mean, that's real.
Or in some ways, kind of, I look at like Dennis from It's Always Sunny. Where he's constantly trying to get off, and he's like, I'm just a guy who totally got off. Like that seems like it's a similar motivation to what these at least Brandon, right? Like Philip seems totally horrified by what he's done, and
Brandon he has a more natural human reaction, which is like, first of all, immediate remorse for an action that cannot be taken back, and also some degree of moral culpability for his own sense of what is right and what is wrong, and then that as compared to his partner who doesn't have any of that, just is like, nope, I'm the most clever one there is. Like again, like I guess I can't really do a spoiler alert from a movie from 1948, but like when he's like uses the rope to tie up the books, where it's like, oh, come on, dude, really? Come on, man. But it's so great in the terms of like, oh, well, it's clear they're going to get away clean on this, and then he just has to like push it like a little bit farther, and he can't resist doing it. It's the temptation of it.
They could have just taken the trunk out, and then no one would have even looked at them, right? Like,
I mean, I guess, if you're gonna. Sure.
but what I'm saying is the whole movie is different levels of how much can we push the situation too, because they almost want to get caught specifically by Rupert, I think, which is why they invite him. Like they want to see if what they did is good by Boss Daddy or whatever, which undercut by fucking Jimmy Stewart being Jimmy Stewart, I think, because like you don't get the same boss daddy vibes that you would if it was, you know, played by a more ephemeral actor, I guess.
Yeah, if it was like Robert Mitchum or something, I think you might buy it more, you know.
Yeah.
Like Robert Mitchum, not the Hunter Robert Mitchum I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Knuckle tattoos and everything.
Yeah, like
we showed him love and hate on his
Right.
his knuckles, and you're like he's gonna be cool with this.
Yeah, he's gonna like charm the woman with his speech about his knuckles.
I think it's just if there's anything that sort of and I like Jimmy Stewart a lot, and I like that this role is a very different kind of role for him at the time too. But like also that is the one thing where it's sort of like you have to strain credulity a little bit to be like, oh, this guy's teaching this nihilism in his class. I don't know, is he?
Yeah,
like
everybody, including Jimmy Stewart, felt that he was miscast.
Yeah,
but also, you know, you gotta have a name. So
yeah.
And who's at that point? Who's heard of John Dahl and Farley Granger? And you know, the kids aren't coming out to see Constance Collier.
I mean, they wanted
Right,
Cary
right,
Grant,
yeah.
and I could see Cary Grant kind of
100%, yeah.
Cary Grant, 100%,
Charming little wink.
Yeah,
exactly.
And he's, you know, he just sachets in. I like that you included in your video essay with the one clip where he like runs in and he sachets into the room or whatever. Like I can see that Cary Grant charming the entire party and then being like, oh shit, you guys actually did the murder thing that I'm always talking about. I don't get tied up in this whole in the drama of the the
more of a big picture guy, really. Yeah.
I could certainly see Cary Grant being a frivolous in the way that I think the play calls for. And I think, you know, if you just read the screenplay, I think the screenplay has the room for that character to be a sillier man, essentially, a more frivolous person. Jimmy Stewart just kind of disregards that or chooses not to go in that direction. Anyway, I think Cary Grant, I imagine Montgomery Clift, if they had gone for Montgomery Clift. I'm thinking about other like closeted actors who they might have called on to play that role. You know, if Hitchcock really wanted to have like an all gay cast, Tony Perkins was a little too young at that point. So I don't know who else they might have considered. Tab Hunter's still too young. So your menu of gay closeted Hollywood celebrities at that point was not lengthy. Not
so
like
this
today.
This is from the Turner Classic Movies thing that you use a bunch of in the in your video essay, but I wanted to grab the part where they're talking about writing the screenplay, because I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting how many different hands this went through, which I think it had to because of the subtext and everything in it. But
I showed him something that I'd written one day, and Hitchcock just said, "Would you like to work on the next screenplay I'm going to do? It's based on Patrick Hamilton's play. It was a true story." And I got the play and I read it. And I thought, I'd love to do this. So I would sit and we would hack out the scenes that he wanted to shoot, and we would find bridges for the stuff he didn't want to shoot. Some elements in the film followed the play, some did not. But then he brought in Arthur Lawrence to write the finished screenplay. And that was a general tendency he had. He would have a treatment written, and he worked very closely with whoever was designing that treatment. And we would sit day after day after day in his garden in Bel Air, and Hitch would produce a bottle of wine around noon. He was a great one for plying you with liquid refreshment. And then he'd hire someone to take that treatment and do generally the dialogue.
I've always thought it was out of character for David to drink anything as corrupt as whiskey.
Out of character for him to be murdered, too.
Yes, wasn't it? The good Americans usually die young on the battlefield, don't they? Well, the Davids of this world merely occupy space, which is why he was the perfect victim for the perfect murder.
Arthur is a very accomplished writer. He wrote the screenplay. I didn't. I just wrote the treatment. But at the time that that film was made, my name was perhaps somewhat better known than Arthur's was. Now Arthur Lawrence has got a much bigger reputation than I've got, and he's earned it.
I had been working on the screenplay for the Snake Pit, which was getting a lot of attention in Hollywood. And I think that brought me to Hitch's attention. I think the real reason was he wanted a playwright, because this is essentially a play and done as a play. So he came to me. I liked the idea of working with him, and we got along very well. It was very easy, really. Rope really comes from an English play by Patrick Hamilton called Rope's End. And I thought it was going to be easier than it was to make it American. The trouble was when you translated the English dialogue, it became very homosexual, unintentionally. And also the class system. It's very different in England than here. So it called for more changes than I anticipated.
Don't.
Got to see if there's
I know. But not just yet. Let's stay this way for a minute.
What was curious to me was Rope is obviously about homosexuals. The word was never mentioned. Not by Hitch, not by anybody at Warner's where it was filmed. It was referred to as it. They were going to do a picture about it, and the actors were it.
You frightened me. You always have. From that very first day in prep school. Part of your charm, I suppose.
The picture was much more successful in Europe because I suppose in Europe they were used to it, and we weren't here. And they didn't deny, but they never discussed that it was based on the Loeb Leopold case. They ignored it. I couldn't understand that. Two rich boys in a Chicago school decided to murder a third boy for the thrill of it. And I mentioned it, and everybody looked blank and went on with whatever we were talking about. But it obviously came from that. At that time, because of a thing called the Legion of Decency and the Catholic Church, they had a watchdog of censors. And you had to be careful. There were certain rules. If a man and a woman were on the same bed, one of them had to have his or her feet on the floor. A married couple could not sleep in the same bed. A woman couldn't ask a man for a divorce. The man had to say, I know you want a divorce. With Rope, of course, you could never say that they were it. So there was no mention of it in the picture at all. And what happened with that picture was it was produced by Sidney Bernstein. He was very English and a great friend of Hitch's and an admirer of Hitch's. And when I finished the screenplay, he said, now, my boy, you have to make every sentence a gem. I said, I'm going to New York. You can make it a gem. Because I had been in Hollywood a little too long to suit me. So I went back to Europe. When I came back, he had taken some of the dialogue from the original play and put it back in this. And it was full of my dear boy. But every my dear boy was marked in big blue pencil. Homosexual, out, out, out. So it had to be cleaned up from all those English remarks, which had nothing to do with anything, really.
I wish we had him out of here. I wish it was somebody else.
I gotta say, every time I hear him talk about it, I just imagine like Tim Curry and Bill Skarsgård, like, you know, like complete clown makeup in the center of the film. You know, it's a movie about it, and it stars it.
Yeah, no, we got it. We got it.
So many remarkable details in those interviews, including that Sidney Bernstein was rewriting the script, which is bananas.
Right.
And the producer stepping in to say, "Oh, I'm going to just do a little writing here on my own." I mean,
Let me improve on this.
What a I'd love to hear what the WGA thinks of that today.
Yeah, not exactly something that is done often.
Yeah, and I like that I like that Arthur Lawrence or whatever decides like, oh, I'm gonna go to New York, and I'm like kind of pissed off about how frustrated this is, and then the producers just sitting there changing everything and being like, we need to make this more British, more literary. We need my dear boy to be back.
the idea of even doing filming plays in general started with Sidney Bernstein in the 30s, I want to say, as a way to export British culture. He saw it as a way to basically capture British culture and show it to a larger world. And so he presented it to Hitch as an opportunity.
Right.
essentially, I know you're bored, Alfred, working in the Hollywood system. I want to start a company with you. And what would you think about shooting plays? And that's when Hitchcock comes back with like, yes, I would like to do that. And I want to do it with this play in particular, which I have to imagine was a little terrifying to Sidney. But allegedly, according to Arthur, Sidney was also romantically interested. I don't think involved, but romantically interested in Farley Granger. I haven't seen that corroborated by anyone else, and I don't know that everything that Arthur says is as it was many years ago. So who knows exactly how closely it hews to what was actually going on. But
we weren't there.
It's a fun thing to. Yeah.
It's also like if he's kind of in a rivalry with him changing his script, right? Like you project all of the things that you don't like about a guy onto like your romantic feelings for someone too. To be like, so he changed my script and he wants my boyfriend too. Like this guy.
Just one of those things would be enough, really.
Yeah. Where's that movie?
There's not a person in Arthur Lawrence's life that was not at some point in conflict with him. He was not a gentleman.
I mean, that's like all the best playwrights and screenwriters, though, right? Like, I mean, Arthur Miller is a good example of someone that was constantly in conflict with everybody too, and is kind of like the premier example of like a 20th century, mid 20th century playwright.
Sure, I don't think that is what made them great, but I do think that there are aspects to a lot of the greats that are unsavory.
Speaking of unsavory, how about that chicken cruelty, huh? That's I kind of forgot how heavily that factors in.
And lots of talking about cooking the chicken.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in high school
too. It's like, choking the chicken, like, and then Rupert's like, I saw him choking the chicken too, and it's like
one of the great mysteries to that, something that I really tried to track down but wasn't able to, was was that slang back then? At what point did that become a reference? Maybe it's from that, probably not. But I don't know.
If it was.
Even if it wasn't recognized slang, obviously, it's just a visceral image that I think could easily suggest sexuality. So whether it was slang or not, it's still very suggestive.
But I mean, also like pulling the rope, like kind of has, I think, sexual.
Oh yeah, jerk it out, like pull it out, I think is the line.
Yeah, like
come on.
They literally turn everything into like everything they possibly can into subtext.
I've been wallowing in Psycho a lot recently, and there's so many lines in that movie that are hysterically ironic. When Norman Bates has a line early on, he says something like, "Mother is what's the word? She's not quite herself today." It's such a funny line.
We covered Psycho, and it was a great episode, but there's so much there. Like, I feel like we could do an entirely different episode and not like cover a single one of the same.
I could talk for hours about Psycho. Yeah.
But getting back to the chicken choking, key moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Key moment in this, and it's sort of like,
okay, Conan, why would you lie? We all saw you choking the chicken.
It just escalates and escalates.
I watched Vertigo, Rear Window, and rewatched this last night. So I'm like, Steve.
You're stuck in permanent Jimmy Stewart voice, aren't you? That's we're gonna need to reboot Forrest, everybody.
I think something that Hitch is really good at is, and this is kind of a gimme because it is easy to do this well, but at least it's not hard to do it well. Is when characters lose their cool. I think it's very compelling in his films when characters freak out and lose control, and that chicken moment where when he loses control of himself. And then I'm thinking of the other one that comes to mind is in The Man Who Knew Too Much at the very end. I'm going to try to say this without spoiling too much. There's a character who reverses her allegiances and has a very exciting scream at the end of Hitch's second The Man Who Knew Too Much. And she screams the word no in a way that I think is one of the highlights. There are two great screams in that movie, and I think that is one of them.
Yeah, and it
that was very oblique.
that is skillfully oblique and by the way, for a movie that no one on this panel was born when it came out. But it's I think it's awesome because it's very well crafted. Like every moment serves a purpose in his films, right? And that's very much the case here. Like this again, as much as we're joking about the modern slang for choking your chicken, right? But it serves a huge purpose here. It's like where he starts to break and where Jimmy Stewart's character is like, okay, something's up here. Like this is where the first thread of the sweater is unraveled, and like it kind of sets him on the path for that.
I love those moments when you can see the gears turning, and they haven't turned all the way, but the movement has begun.
Yeah. I mean, another one is when he goes to get his hat and it's the wrong hat, and he looks at the initials and it's David's initials in the hat, and he's like, huh, like they said this guy hasn't been to the house in a while, and his hat is literally right here.
His hat is here.
I can't quite recall, but I think that's one of the explicit cuts in the film. There's only a few, I think like 3 or 4 actual hard cuts that aren't disguised. And I think that's one where the camera travels very close into the hat, and then there's a hard cut up to his face. Or maybe I have the order a little off there, but those actual hard cuts really do draw attention to something significant just happened.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're used narratively, and that's what's so great. And also, hello to Mark Borchardt, the legendary Mark Borchardt in the chat, friend of the show. He digs those close cinematic adaptations of plays. That includes Rope, for sure. This would be a hell of a play to be a part of, and probably was a hell of a movie set to be a part of, especially when you consider that, granted, it wasn't like how digital is now where you can just do everything in bite-sized little bits, but like that is a lot of skill and a lot of things that just have to go your way or everything's screwed.
Oh yeah. God, what a nightmare to do those. The first, the first, I don't know in what order they shot. I don't know if they shot sequentially, but the first reel of the film, the first 10-minute long take, went great. Hitchcock tells a story about how it went great. And then they get to the end and everybody's like, oh, thank God, this is actually going to work. Everything's coming together. And the camera comes back into place, and standing in the window is one of the electricians, just standing there amongst the miniature set of New York, just a guy.
And he talked about that on Dick Cavett. And
that's the one.
I grabbed the Dick Cavett a couple minutes of that. But it's kind of funny that Dick Cavett's like, and you couldn't just write an electrician in? And he's like, no, I could not just write.
It is such a weird, like, this is a little bit of a tangent, but that Dick Cavett interview is so bizarre. Dick seems so uncomfortable and unhappy. And I don't know, maybe it's just the way he is, but the whole interview is so uncomfortable because Hitchcock has such a deadpan, wry, playful style that, and I think Dick can't quite tell if he's being fucked with or not. It's just very fun to watch. I love this map.
And Dick Cavett is usually, as an interviewer, especially at that time, was the one that was kind of the hippest one, and the one that was like most likely to engage with somebody that was kind of doing that in the right way. But yeah, I know the one. I haven't seen it in a long time. But I know the one you're talking about. So what do we got here, Forrest? What is this? This
is this is a map of the set. That kind of shows you steps of how they're walking through the apartment and how the camera is following. And of course, you can see here that the walls are detachable, but also, I mean, the camera goes right through the doors here. I don't know. I just kind of found it cool.
Yeah, I love this schematic here because, I mean, for one thing, it shows you where the challenges were. Those cameras were about twice the size, and they're on these giant rigs that were about at least twice the size, probably more like 3 times the size of those doorways. So they had to have them on sliding rails that. Oh boy, you better make sure that everything lines up perfectly. What's missing from this, of course, is the bedrooms. At one point. There's actually a book, the novelization, one of the editions of the novelization of Rope has a map on the back cover that shows the bedroom, and it shows that there is one bedroom for both of these guys who live together. So it's one additional little touch, one additional little hint that that these two guys share something more intimate than might be let on.
How many?
And he has a line. In fact, one of the characters has a line. He says something like, the one asks, "Where's the phone?" He says, "It's in the bedroom." Once again, just a tiniest little hint that there's only one bedroom. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, exactly. Oh, these good friends only have one bedroom, huh? Okay,
and they were roommates.
Yeah, very, very.
And he seems kind of like he has no real sexual interest in the woman. He has sexual interest in fucking with her, right? Like he seems to get off on fucking
a power
with
play, basically.
But there's no the entire time it's like almost like he's some kind of transcendent figure, and she's their short relationship or whatever. It was just kind of like this blip of like this person above her in some way that she's like trying to figure out still. and he's like unable to figure him out because he's literally just number one, he's a gay man, but number two, that is just fucking with her. Like, both of those things I think are not something that you would necessarily figure out if you were like in the relationship with her at the time. It seems like the question, like, oh, Brandon at somebody's feet, which I mean also has like the secondary connotation to it with the subtext, but like, right. Oh, Brandon at someone's feet, I have to meet this man. Like, there's something almost I don't know, there's something mercurial about him, I think, that she's still trying to figure out, or she's still trying to ponder.
I do wonder if a subtext that was intended by Arthur Lawrence was that they kill this guy and they say, oh, because he's inferior, he's not as smart, whatever. If there might also be some less highfalutin jealousy going on there, that Brandon is annoyed that their friend David is marrying a woman and considers that a betrayal. I don't know.
Pure cattiness. Yeah. That's it. Never underestimate the power of pure cattiness. Correct. Yeah.
It just might be resentful that David is playing the game of, we're all gay men, but I'm going to try to play, I'm going to follow the rules and marry a woman and get, enter this lavender marriage because frankly, I think the woman comes off as sexually interesting as well, and it wouldn't surprise me if she had a girlfriend somewhere. But I'm extending my headcanon far beyond what is on this, what is in the text.
Well, she's definitely independent, right? Like to a point that like it's interesting that she's also trying to rush into marrying one of these guys at some point, or getting into feeling something for one of these guys when she seems to have a career as well, and she seems to have her own life, and just be like another one of these interesting characters among an interesting cast of characters, more than someone who actually seems like the helpless character in the Hitchcock film that's like the Mary Sue kind of person, right? Like she herself is another one of these interesting people kind of flitting in and out of of the scene. I mean, not that, well, Hitchcock always has one like very, very interesting woman, I think, and then a lot of times he has one kind of like Mary Sue kind of woman in the background. Just like one is complicated and one is like very simple, and Hitchcock loves to do that.
I wouldn't describe her as helpless.
Yeah.
Here's a question, and I don't know if there is a definitive answer. Is Rope noir?
Gosh, I wouldn't think that it is. I don't think I would put in that I mean, I could certainly hear an argument. The style of the dialogue, the visual aesthetic of it. There's some blinking neon, but beyond that, and a couple of really nice fedoras. But other than that, I don't think so.
I can see an argument that it's like neo-noir in some ways. Like it takes those elements of noir out of some of them, like the mystery element of it, and kind of Jimmy Stewart acting the part of like the classic detective, but it isn't a noir film, and like it doesn't check all the boxes. Although I don't think anyone
pseudo noir in a way, or proto noir.
I don't know if filmmakers really even started thinking in those exact terms until
they weren't.
Until
this is an after the fact thing. It's just funny because it goes back to our whole winter noir month of like what did and did not constitute noir, what is neo noir, and just sort of like, and I realized that like as many of those films I've seen, how little I actually knew about the nomenclature of all of it, like the what I call like the record store bin aspect of it. Where it goes, and how little I care.
Really heated about it. Some people are really heated trying to come up with a definition of what isn't noir, and it ends up with like some very catty film academic fights.
I was gonna say that's back when Twitter was fun. Yes, I remember.
Yeah. I just, I don't think that it has quite the darkness or the cynicism to really qualify.
No, I would agree with you on that. I think that's it's notable. I think that it's amazing that like noir adjacent, sure, yeah. Think of like what Compulsion comes out like about 10 years later, right? That's got to be like the with Orson Welles and all that. That's like close in tone, but a very different kind of film. But that's kind of the well, isn't that based off of the actual story that I'm trying to remember.
I'm not going to be any help here. I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's okay.
Compulsion was 1959.
Okay, so I was close. That was 11 years. Fine.
There's been multiple adaptations kind of this, or of the play version of this, not of this the Hitchcock version of it.
Well, it's a very different kind of it's a very different kind of work as well. I was also just looking at other, just for context, thinking about other movies that came out this year. So first of all, the Red Shoes came out the same year, which is interesting. Which is also a very different kind of film. But I always have I'm always curious as to where, when it existed, where Hollywood was at the time. And the Olivier Hamlet is what won Best Picture this year, which is interesting. And Treasure of the Sierra Madre was nominated, and Houston won for Best Director. But that's kind of where things were at. So this is kind of even more crazy and daring if you think about it. Yeah, and no shade given to that Hamlet, which is perfectly fine, and certainly not Treasure of Sierra Madre, which I love. But that's this is like an A24 picture by comparison to those films, right? I mean, it's wild.
I think that's a really good comparison. Yeah, we're still very much in the era, the golden age, the studio system it's about to start breaking down, but hasn't yet.
Right.
So there's a lot of Hollywood's being run by giants at this point, and for Hitch to make such a big risk is pretty bold.
It's at this point also you had to actually loan actors out, right? Farley Granger had to be loaned out by Samuel Goldwyn to appear in this at all. So it's kind of it's breaking the constraints of this this Hollywood system in so many different ways, right? You could see the chains kind of starting to come off of it, because every creative force or anyone that was comfortable enough with their creative force to want to transcend the Hollywood studio system and not just be another film director among film directors kind of had to do something bold, and actors too, because they're just kind of getting loaned out at this point.
Yeah, this was a big frustration for Farley, because he was just being put in the worst possible pictures and the worst possible roles. And it was right after this that he went to, it was in part because of Arthur Lawrence, who was mostly a New York playwright. So following Rope, Farley starts paying a lot more attention to Broadway and realizes that's where he needs to be. So we get a few more pictures out of him, Stranger on the Train notably, but then he gets traded, and I don't know exactly the legality of this, but at one point, I think this is probably around 53, 54 maybe, Selznick and Harry Cohn, who ran Columbia, were playing poker, and I believe it was poker, and Selznick bets Farley Granger's contract to Harry Cohn, loses Farley's contract in a poker game, and then Farley's expected to just work for Columbia after that.
Wow!
And that was the final straw for him. He bought himself. He bought his contract out. It's penniless after that for a long time. But
that's actually how we got Andy on this show. We bet on him.
Hey, always bet on me.
Yeah, I mean, it feels almost like slave conditions, right? In some ways,
well, but that's how the studio system was then.
Yeah,
it's if you're under contract, you're basically under conscription.
Oh yeah, there were a couple guys who were they called the shots, and they could be as unpleasant as they wanted, and they sure were.
they chose
we kind of saw some of that in Barton Fink whenever we watched that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's kind of parodying a similar by the end of it, a similar dynamic. This is the Dick Cavett Hitchcock.
Oh, sweet.
Thing. I didn't read that he was uncomfortable. It just seems like Dick Cavett, but now that you've said that, I feel like the body language makes more sense in this.
Are there films you wouldn't do over again? Some people have been very hurt to find when Rope was their favorite picture, and that body in the trunk, and the young men giving a dinner party with the body in the trunk, and all that appealed to so many people as a mystery, as a frightening film. And they're disappointed to hear that you wouldn't do it the way you did it if you had it to do it again.
Oh, yes, I would. Yes, that'll be shown on TV very soon.
Mm-hmm. But I mean,
it hasn't been shown as yet.
You did the astounding thing of doing the movie in 20-minute takes.
Well, that was because it was a theater piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to get some movement into what is really a theater piece.
Yeah.
So we follow the actors all around, and it was a prodigious job of production because walls had to slide away to let the camera go through, and all kinds of things. I remember the opening shot, we had this set, and it was a sort of a penthouse room, and we built a great big panorama of New York in miniature form, not just a painted back.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a dining room and a kitchen. I remember the opening scene took 750 feet without a cut, starting with the murder of the boy, following the two through into the dining room, into the kitchen, and you hold your breath right the way through for fear something may go wrong.
You're the director.
And they got some champagne and brought it back. And as the camera came back, I said, my God, thank goodness this shot's over. And as we panned round, there's an electrician standing there, right in the window.
Oh, and you couldn't rewrite the film to allow for that.
Start all over again.
I guess that's why they said you were crazy to try it, because what the average take in a film is how many seconds or how many
It
feet?
could be half a minute,
And you
2
did-
minutes.
You did 20-minute takes, I
10,
believe.
10 or 11 minute takes.
10 or 11, which is unheard of until you did it. I guess I'm fascinated with those technical things and how you did them. You told Truffaut a story about the glass of milk in Suspicion.
In Suspicion, yes, Cary Grant is suspected of being a murderer. And there's a very high shot of a hallway, and he's bringing her what you, the audience, know to be the fatal glass of milk. And he brings it all the way up, and it comes round the circular staircase until it comes right into the camera. Well, so that glass of milk stood out very clearly, I put a little lamp inside the milk.
A little light bulb?
Yes, with a little battery. So the milk glowed all the way up.
That's such a British,
Sort of enhancing
thing
the
to put a
poise.
light bulb into.
Didn't you once try almost persuade Garbo to come out of retirement for a film?
No, I didn't. No, I couldn't persuade myself to do that.
But did you try once?
No, never, no.
I thought there was some talk that she might have played in one of your films.
No, the only trouble is, obviously with Garbo, you couldn't find a subject where she could be alone.
All right.
Good on him, man. That was a solid burn. That was good. Gonna go down this weird Garbo alley? Sure, yeah.
I love the he's like, I put it inside a glass of milk. And it's like
The fatal milk.
That's the most British thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I actually used to put lights in my kids' drinks to make them drink it. So, I'm glad I'm glad I got that from Hitchcock.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. So we didn't even talk about the neon sign, which if anyone saw Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho, clearly he saw this too, because I mean, it's almost like an homage, right? That it's got the blinking, the blinking neon sign that's in there, and has become a something of a, I guess, neo-noir cliche, but it's present here, and it's probably why the electrician was there, frankly. but unfortunately also in shot.
He's there. I'm there to fix the light, and they're like, "Get out of here, electrician."
Yeah, that blinking neon was quite a hassle for them to get it to time properly. They actually used components from an airplane, from a bomber. I forget exactly why this was necessary, but the electronics they gutted the switch that is used to drop bombs from an airplane. Is what governs the timing of that blinking neon light.
Wow, all this to make it malfunction the way they wanted it to malfunction. Astounding.
Because they didn't have a Radio Shack to go to.
I guess not. Yeah.
Guess not. Yeah.
I mean, kids today know the struggle, but
kids today don't even know what Radio Shack is.
Correct.
But yeah,
neither did the kids back then.
Yeah. The wild stuff. I think that it's interesting that this is definitely there's a lack of clear-cut protagonist here, right? Everyone's kind of messed up in their own ways. Not the least of which is you got an influential man that's sort of surprised that his literal words were taken seriously by his students and aghast. It's you said it, man. You said these things, right?
I would agree that it is hard to find a character that you're really rooting strongly for, which is surprising because in a lot of Hitchcock films, you can find a way to root for the antagonist, not the antagonist, but you can find a way to root for the bad guy, somebody who did something wrong. Yeah, and I
kind
say
of
that,
like
you know,
the
I've been watching-
protogenitor, the anti-hero in a lot of cases, you know.
There's just, it's very difficult to find much sympathy with either of those characters because Brandon is so diabolical and abrasive and unpleasant, I would say. And
Yes.
Farley Granger's character, I can't believe I forgot his name. Brandon, the other guy is so whimpering and weak that it's hard to want to side with him.
Yeah. It's Philip.
Philip, thank you.
Yeah. It's fine. Well, his name is as forgettable as anything in the world, right? It's just like a very placeholder name. But yeah, but by the same token, you're kind of like along with them, and it's I can only for modern constructs, I can only put it aside to like a Breaking Bad thing where you're just like, or Sopranos, where you're like rooting for them not to get caught, and you're like, well, wait a second, they just murdered someone. Maybe they should get caught. And it's kind of like, and one of them's like openly flaunting it and basically turning into like some like weird like head game, and you know, it's depending on your moral compass. As an allegory, it's fantastic, but if it was like a real life event, obviously totally horrifying. Like, oh, we ate. You know, we had canapes off of a chest that had a human body in it. Oh yeah, NBD, Average Tuesday. Okay.
Yeah, well, and it's like the more that they want to get caught, almost the more like you don't want them to get caught, right? Like,
right.
The more that they boldly like, oh, I can get away with this. I could totally do this. It's like the more you personally are like, well, now that you really want to get caught, I don't know if I want. I don't feel like this is you know, I don't like. I don't think you know that you want to get caught, but
I don't think you've thought about this enough. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty notable. You want to dive into one-liners and?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, of course, Letterboxd, Matt, I will address this to you as your guest, is a social media site for film lovers to talk with and to each other about the films that they love. Maybe the films that they didn't love, the films that they had weird, exquisite gay thirsting over. And, of course, this is an open source democracy. Everyone gets to have their say. Now it's the Siskel's and Eberts of the world. And this is best expressed succinctly for the purposes of this bit, where we look at all of the reviews in this truncated form and react to them on screen before we close out the show. So these are the Letterboxd one-liners for Rope. Let's roll them. Fellas, is it gay to murder your friend just to impress your prep school housemaster?
Apparently. What kind of country is this when, you know, there's a sexuality assigned to murdering your friend to impress your prep school housemaster?
Two gay guys teach an autistic guy not to be a eugenicist anymore. That one got me. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty good. Philip is not the friend to take LSD with. Yo, that is facts.
No,
that is,
yeah, he'd be freaking out.
Yeah, none of them are, to be honest.
I don't know. Maybe the girl. She seems cool.
Yeah.
They would all be bad trips in various ways.
Actually, I feel like even the sister that's like, you know, the British lady or whatever.
Yeah,
I feel like she'd be a trip. She couldn't be on acid too, though. You know what I mean? Like you'd have to be on acid talking to her, and she'd be like, "I saw the something the other day." And you're like,
yeah, it might make it an easier conversation. Actually, I don't know.
yeah, especially if you could see it.
You're the only one that knows what movie she's talking about because you're on acid.
Rest in peace, Brandon Shaw. You would have loved Joker 2019.
That is a movie for him.
It is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is.
You think murdering your college or your high school classmate is funny? And he's like, I do, and I'm tired of pretending that it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Would totally work. Something about watching a self-centered, manipulative guy and his anxious alcoholic boyfriend host a murderous dinner party, then arguing over strangling a chicken is so very therapeutic to me for some reason.
No stars though on that one, huh?
Yeah, that's just a log, no stars. Although they did have they obviously like to do a custom poster. That's a cool poster.
And they liked the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people don't. I don't know. Some people don't feel good with the star designation.
And some people just do stars, which I get if you're keeping a list or something, but like, you know, like it feels like it defeats the purpose of the app.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think sometimes the heart is like, you know, I really like to watch this movie. Yeah, it's only a 3-star movie, but I really like to watch it.
You enjoyed it, yeah. I get
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock really said, "I support gay rights, but I also support gay wrongs."
True.
Yeah. These gays knew it was over when the uninvited wine aunt who does horoscopes showed up.
That scene's great though, like the
That scene's
double
awesome.
the double talk of the hands, and she's like, "You'll be notorious for your hands," and he's like,
Yeah.
"Ah, my hands."
Yeah.
It's like a high guy looking at his hands for the first time.
Right. As the aforementioned LSD. Can attest that every philosophy class has 2 kids that worship Nietzsche for only the weird reasons.
You know, we're working on Give Them an Argument. I think Forrest and I can both agree to that statement.
Yeah.
There you go. The original Be Gay, Do Crime.
True.
I don't know. I think there's a Western that came out before this, but
Right.
Sure.
Was it the one with Montgomery Clift that gets referenced by Matt in this video?
Oh, I think that's is it Red Rocks?
Yeah.
It's Red something.
I don't know.
I don't know. There's one with where they have like Billy the Kid and this other and Doc Holliday. No, yeah, Billy the Kid and Doc Holliday are like going around doing crimes together, and they basically spend the entire film arguing who's going to go off with the girl and who's going to keep the horse, and it's like this weird like.
All right.
Yeah, see, I get the girl, you keep the horse.
And they got like the twinkiest twink to play Billy the Kid.
All right.
Like yeah, it is.
At the end of the girl or horse argument, you're just like, we could just save so much time by just going off with each other, and then the movie's done.
Yeah, give the horse to the lady, and you know.
Yeah.
We only ever see the S on that huge blinking neon sign outside, but I'm sure the rest of it reads UBTEXT. That's subtext. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Very subtle. Very, very alliterative. Those are letterbox.
Not much sub about that subtext.
No. These are the letterbox one-liners for Rope. Please follow the show. That is Let's Go Brandon. Rupert's YouTube channel, Philosophy of a Murder, at Movie Night Extra, representing the show and all the wonderful stuff that we cover here. I, of course, am Conan Neutron, The Art of Murder, covering all the highbrow, midbrow, the good populist fare. Almost done with the Criterion Challenge, but you can still follow me along for the last 4 that I got, so I'm killing this one this year. J. Andrew, Murder Art Critic World, doesn't keep the rope in the kitchen drawer, but he is watching the weirdest stuff, so you don't have to. Or maybe so you can. You have a prop. I appreciate that you had a prop. That's fantastic.
I've been waiting to pull this out. I keep it in my a drawer of like art supplies and various things I've used to make art with. So you know.
Matt, did you realize you were being on stream with a prop comic tonight? I didn't realize that.
Quite an honor.
He's in front of the Comedy Store wall too. It's like,
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Tell us what airline food next. Matt, are you a Letterboxd user? It's not. This isn't like peer pressure. I just am going to call you out.
I'm
so.
afraid not. No, for my Letterboxd reviews or my videos, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say you gotta have like a few of our friends. You've got a better outlet for that. Jay in the World, take us with plugs. Why don't you?
All right, you're watching us on YouTube, so please do those YouTube things. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell, and of course, because we're all slaves to the algorithm, watch the video to the end, please. You get to hear a great Conan Neutron song, and that allows us to be discovered by other movie fans. If we're over on Twitch as well, and do the Twitch things, throw us a sub. If you happen to have a Amazon Prime account, you can subscribe for free. Doesn't cost you anything, but really helps out the channel. Thank you for doing any or all of that stuff. You can find us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course Blue Sky. Find us there, follow us, and say hi. We'll answer you. Probably, I imagine.
Why did you undercut it? That was fine. You don't undercut
yeah.
it. That was
I don't know.
what.
So sometimes I don't answer people saying hi to me.
All right.
And then I panic.
You're too busy getting your prop for the next bit ready. I guess.
I know.
don't know.
I had to dig through a drawer and find this.
It's a thing that says hi.
But it wasn't in the kitchen.
You want to say hi to me on a Blue Sky.
Yeah, go ahead. Say hi to me on Blue Sky. That's fine. I'll let you on Blue Sky.
All right.
Thank you.
Glad you gave them permission.
Thank you for deigning to let people say hi to you on Blue Sky. I'm so glad to hear that.
But we also have a Patreon. With the Patreon, you get access to things like our after parties, which forever. which is nice. And I think we're planning on doing one tonight. Was that the
Sure.
talk, or I don't remember. I was on air whenever you guys were having that conversation. I'm sorry.
I mean, I set one up. It's up to you guys if you want to do it. Yeah.
Let the cards.
But Matt,
fall
if you can join us, if you'd like to join us, we that's where we kind of let our hair down and talk about
more
lots
than
of other stuff.
the show.
if you thought this was way too on topic, this will solve that problem for you.
Yeah, all that we dispense with formalities finally.
Yes, finally, at last, I'm free to speak of what I want to speak about. But you can get them if you join the Patreon. What's next, Andy?
Yes, you're next.
Okay,
in fact, I did want to plug your album Art of Murder, since that's kind of apropos to this.
I inadvertently, I did so this. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot that's where I got the title for the second Conan Neutron: The Secret Friends record. Is from Rope, and it's kind of like a small line, but I just had that bouncing around my head apparently for like 20 years, and then pulled that out of nowhere. For the record, that's about Hannibal Lecter and the world around him. Like, it has nothing to do with Rope, but I just like that phrase, the art of murder. I thought that was cool. So.
Well, Conan, I think your second album, there's something's about it.
Exactly.
But you can find that and his new one that just dropped.
Bam!
Yeah,
Adult Prom.
right there. Yes,
It's cool that
Prom.
you looked up and it kind of looked like you were looking up at the van when you did. That was good typing.
He's like, I'm about to get hit by a van.
Exactly. There's the vinyl is shipping next week, I think, for pre-orders, and if you can still get it.
Yes.
NeutronFriends.bandcamp.com. Yeah,
Yes.
there it is.
Yes.
I think you're busy readying your next prop, so I was just going to do it for you.
Okay, no problem. No, I was actually dropping my iPad, so I wouldn't have in front of me Protonic Reversal, and I did not write down who was on it this week. So,
John Baisley of Baroness is coming on this week. So,
exciting!
Should be a good one. They have a new record. So if you're into that band, then you should listen to Protonic Reversal this week, which is the name of my show. That is the background of behind me. And there's a Patreon for that too. $1 a month, early access. Let's keep it moving. Let's go.
Yeah, and of course you got tour dates.
I do have tour dates. Yes, West Coast tour. There's some art from that. Tempe, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sacramento, Reno, Eugene, Portland, Bellingham, Seattle, Bellingham Exit, and Rat City Recon in Seattle. All those dates with Long. So, if any of our West Coast fans want to hang out and probably pitch themselves to be on the show,
Yeah, Matt, if you wanted to, I think that's there's some shows near you.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Rat City, right up here next to Seattle.
Excellent. So
is that you're a Seattle guy, Matt?
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. That's one of my favorite cities. It's too bad it's completely unaffordable to live in anymore.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But Kristina's not here, but please, stop by her Patreon, which is patreon.com/cosmopolitics. Throw her a few bucks. She'd greatly appreciate that. And of course, Matt, our guest, has a phenomenal YouTube channel. I'm always saying to my wife,
he's always talking about it. It really gets annoying sometimes, Matt, but he is.
Yeah, no, I'm always saying stuff to my wife like, "Hey, did you know Jim Nabors is gay?" And she's like, "Yes, I did." I'm like, okay.
You got a powerful friend in Andy World.
But
wonderful.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
And I'm always stopping it to tell her something that happened, just happened in the episode.
Reporting on what you're watching on YouTube. Wonderful.
Right?
You never know. Guess who was gay in this episode?
Yeah.
But no, I quite enjoy it.
There he is now. Actually, they worked it
out. But so I encourage everybody to go check it out, subscribe, and of course, buy your new book. Hi, Honey, I'm Homo.
Yes, indeed. It's the history of queer characters on American sitcoms, from Bewitched all the way up to Modern Family. We got the Golden Girls, we got Friends, we got Soap, Cheers. It's basically the behind-the-scenes story of how queer characters wound up sneaking subversive jokes in front of American audiences and how that changed the world.
That's awesome. That sounds like a heady topic.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun too. I was able to fit in a lot of like my favorite sitcom jokes, my favorite sitcom episodes. Talk about basically the making of, and also there's just the pleasure of sitting down to spend time with your good what feel like your good friends from sitcoms.
Sure.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating how much like sitcoms have been a force for like social progress. Like considering, like I feel like a lot of like TV critics and stuff will bitch about like the format of sitcoms not changing as much as they wish it did over time. And it's like, yeah, but like some of our biggest moments in like history have been reinforced by sitcoms. Like,
No, but it was considered a low art form for many years, right? Like it wasn't until the rise of prestige television that people like even gave like their due to like some quite brilliant shows.
Yeah, I would say that's true. The television has always been, because it's, I think, more accessible relatively, perhaps not as valued as cinema. But and I used to be a real snob about it too, where I was like, oh, well, film is artistic, but television is just a product. But that really, I think, is not the case. As I learned, the more that I learned about the folks who made these shows and the lengths to which they went to get stuff on the air, sometimes stuff that they really weren't supposed to. It's just a fascinating world.
Norman Lear is kind of the like one of the greats in that sense. Bringing actual politics to the table in like a 30-minute like form that people could actually like ingest in a way and like process in a way I think that they couldn't like through cinema or something like that. And it's like, I don't know, like the guy was a powerhouse.
And there's a lot of cross-pollination for creative things, too. I mean, a lot of people don't know Lucille Ball was a major driving force to Star Trek getting on air in the first place, which is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that makes television seem a little disposable, which is that basically everybody can watch it and it's cheaper to make, is also what makes it awfully powerful, because it can move fast. It can take more risks. Everybody has some connection to a television show. It may feel like a very solitary thing to be sitting there watching a show by yourself, but that there are millions of people out there watching the same thing that you are.
Yeah.
So everyone should get your book so they can read all about it.
Get my book, Hi Honey, I'm Homo, available now at gaysitcoms.com.
Right.
So do you have any final thoughts on this movie?
Boy, oh boy, I love this film. I think it is unjustifiably overlooked often. I think it makes a great double feature with Farley Granger's second collaboration with Hitchcock, Strangers on a Train. I think watch Rope, watch Strangers on a Train together. You get a lot more of that. He puts the sub in subtext.
All right. Andy, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I will. I gotta say, like the colors, which we barely touched on in this movie. Whoever did the costumes in the colors, and plus the, I guess it's Christmas sexual lighting that was flashing in the apartment because it was red and green. But the colors are actually very interesting, and I kind of wish I spent more time kind of analyzing it. But the beautiful red dress that she has on, like I loved that color red and how the lights in the film was catching the colors on it, and the suits too. Just the tone of blue that they used were just they showed up on camera really well. I don't know if
it's kind of reminiscent of stage lighting too, right? Like stage lighting being a different force, I think, than cinema lighting usually.
Yeah,
but like I don't think it's like a like a Kurosawa ran where like the colors have like this great deeper meaning or anything to that. But it's just it's a little bit more like what looks good on film, like how Suzuki approached Tokyo Drifter,
or even like something came out the same year, the Red Shoes. Like that's like a masterclass in the usage of color as well. But like there wasn't. Yeah, it's funny. The thoughtfulness of that is through a modern lens. Like we don't often know exactly what was going on at that time, but it is absolutely notable when it shows, especially for something where like it's kind of beige. There's a lot of beige and earth tones.
If anybody was going to talk shit about it, though, it would be Arthur Lawrence. He'd be like,
"That's a fact."
He turned on the red and the green, and I thought that it should have been blue, but it was red and green, and I wasn't into that. And but Conan, you got final thoughts?
I do. I think there's Well Crafted, and then there's Rope, which is technically magnificent. It's a meticulous. It's surreptitious. As mentioned before, without a rope, there wouldn't be a Rear Window, no Psycho, no Vertigo, no North by Northwest. And it's a consistently compelling murder mystery where the exact details are given to you at the very beginning and the suspense of scene if they get discovered. I don't think it's Hitchcock's best, but it might be his most underrated. And while the technical marvel of it is certainly exquisite, it's a landmark of coded gay cinema that shines as well. And yeah, great to discuss it, and had a great time talking to you, Matt.
Thanks so much for having me. Always happy to talk about Rope and Hitchcock in general.
All right. Nice. Thanks so much for coming on.